All right, so this is going to be my follow-up tackle video for Lake Baccarac. Still haven't really, I've unpacked a few things, but not much. So I figured I'd go through the tackle again and talk about what we used, what we didn't use, what worked, what didn't work, maybe what I would do differently. You know, I think there's a temptation to go, hey, here's all the stuff I didn't use, so I won't take that next time. I don't think that's smart. You know, I talked with some of the guys that have been before, and they kind of just said, you know, for example, I brought a ton of Kitech swim baits, hardly used any of them, but you know, and they all acknowledged, like, yeah, there wasn't really a Kitech bite this time, but you know, next time there might be, and that might be the deal. So you know, I think if you do it right, you're gonna bring a lot of stuff that you don't end up using. You know, I think the big thing is not missing a bunch of stuff that you do need. A couple of things off the top of my head that I wish I would have brought. Some type of chapstick with sunscreen. I did bring some sunscreen and ended up rubbing that on my lips when I needed it, but that's not I don't love doing that. So, and then the other thing that I think of is rod socks, and I actually thought about bringing them and didn't. I would have liked to have them. You do end up doing a little bit of carrying your rods up and down between the boat and the lodge, and they inevitably get tangled up. So anyway, we'll just go through this. I will say, so my luggage all made it there, no problem. I had anything with hooks in my check bag. Almost the vast majority of the plastics were in my tackle bag. Man, that tackle bag was heavy. Lugging that around the airport sucked. I wouldn't be surprised if that thing weighed 50 or 60 pounds. It was cutting my shoulder in half. I'm not sure there's a solution to that. And you know, definitely there's a part of you that wants to carry on as much as you can in case your check bag doesn't make it. But that wasn't an issue. And so when we left, I did take a decent amount of stuff out of the carry-on and threw it in my check bag, and I kind of guessed. I know my check bag was a little bit light on the way out. I think it was around 40 pounds, and so I took you'll see, I took a decent amount of plastics and threw them in the check bag, and hoping that I would be under 50, and I was. So the other thing that I would probably bring next time is the luggage scale. Just bring it with me, and then you can load up that check bag on the way back until it's, you know, 49 pounds full of stuff, so you got less to lug through the airport. But so this will be a mess, but here we are. So you're seeing in here mostly just plastics I threw in here so I wouldn't have to carry them. Tackle warehouse hat. Flukes, I hardly threw a fluke. Certainly something I could have ended up throwing on a free rig. I thought about it. I thought about throwing a lizard on the free rig, and I never did. It doesn't mean I wouldn't next time. I would bring flukes next time, probably. Pit Boss, I brought a bunch of those. I did throw the jig around a little bit. It just was not the deal. Never got a bite on a jig. I can't say I stuck it out for a long time, the lizards. So you know, what's really important, and I would, if I can next time, it would be great if you could get in touch with your guide before you go. And I think there's a chance that even if you're there at the same time, if you have two different guides, what you'll be throwing could be very different. And the one thing we ended up throwing a bunch was a 6-inch wacky rigged Gary Yamamoto Senko on a Gamakatsu 1/8 ounce, like a belly weighted swim bait hook. And I don't think I have any of them here. I didn't bring any with me, I don't think. And the ones we use I had to buy in the tackle shop while we were there. I was not planning on throwing a bunch of wacky rigged Senkos, but our guide was very big on it. So, and also, in my head, I should have been covered. There you go. Let's throw that on there. That's a 6-inch straight, stick bait. He was not a fan of the Z-Man. He didn't speak a lot of English. He was great. Worked his butt off for us. I went on this trip alone. Jumped in the van, drove 5 hours from Mazet Lawn to Baccarac, and sat next to a guy. His name was Kevin. We hit it off, and he ended up being my roommate, my fishing partner. Very good angler, better than me, and he kicked my butt all week pretty much to show it. So I learned a lot, had a great time with him. His son is a pro, so, great group of guys. I looked at that group and said, man, I'm just going to assume just about everybody here is more experienced and a better angler than I am, which is fine. Gives me an opportunity to learn a bunch, and I did. But, when we figured out we were roommates, he right away said, hey, any of my tackle's your tackle. And I was like, agreed. Anything I got in my box you want, just grab it. You don't even have to ask. And when we got in the boat with our guide, Juan, we told him the same thing. We said, hey, listen, if Kevin needs a bait and it's in my tackle box, Kevin gets the bait, vice versa. And so Kevin had brought a fair amount of 6-inch Gary Yamamoto Senkos. And so anytime Juan went to grab a Senko to rig for either one of us, he was grabbing the Gary Yamamoto. I rigged one of these at one point, and when he got the chance, he pulled it off and put on a Gary Yamamoto. So, I don't know. I mean, maybe I was going to catch him a lot better on a Gary Yamamoto than a Z-Man. I don't personally think that's the case, but you got a guide, and you're like, he's the expert. It's hard not to listen to him. But so anyway. So I think my plan here is I rarely travel. I rarely travel with a checked bag. So, I think my plan is to, between these two bags, all of the baits that I go, hey, I'm probably not going to throw them locally, I'll put in here. And maybe the bulk of the baits I'll leave in between these two bags. And, if we get fishing this season and I kind of know what's in here and I need them, I'll just grab them out. But, I would definitely bring these again, and I would intend on throwing them. I would probably also bring a chunk of Gary Yamamoto's just in case, I ran into a similar situation. Obviously, if I was able to tell the future, and I wouldn't have brought these at all. I would have brought I would have brought a bulk pack of 6-inch Gary Yamamoto Senkos, you know, and we had to go to the tackle shop multiple times to buy more. And the last time we did, you know, Kevin was like, hey, grab some 7-inch Senkos. I might want to throw a 7-inch. And we got in the boat the next morning and handed Juan the pack of Senkos, and he went through them, and he went 6-inch, 6-inch, 6-inch. He took the 7 inches and threw them in the tackle box. He was not interested in them. Now, absolutely, if we would have said, hey, I want to throw it, he wouldn't have had any problem with it, but he didn't have any confidence in it. So anyway, that's that on Senkos. You know, I think these are a great idea. You know, personally, I have a hard time believing that you're going to catch significantly more on a Gary Yamamoto than you are on one of these. But, you know, if I started throwing them and I figured out that was the case, then yeah, I wouldn't be interested in these. But I got no reason to think these are, you know, this isn't a good bait. And they are definitely tougher. They'll last longer than a Gary Yamamoto. So that's it on the Senkos. I mean, I probably used 1 or 2 of these. The other thing about the Elastec, which I didn't necessarily know, is it floats. So all of it floats. So this would be, and I didn't end up throwing it. There's a slightly different one that I'm sure we'll run into a pack of, but this is the giant TRD, and there's also a Fatty Z, I think it's called, and I'm sure we'll run into a pack somewhere. And I knew the Fatty Z floated, but I didn't know that all this Elastec stuff floats. So what did become my favorite bait of the whole trip for me personally was that free rig Fatty Z. And had I known that these floated too, I probably would have tried one of these too, because they're pretty similar. You'll just see the Fatty Z has a little bit of like a tail on it. But so those, you know, all things being equal, I would intend to take those again. I got these, I think it's chatterbait trailers. I never threw a chatterbait, not once. I thought about it. I threw a spinnerbait. It wasn't a thing, really. Flukes. I threw Fluke on day one. He had a white one. I don't know where it came from. It probably came from Kevin's bag. I did catch a fish or two on it, but it never turned out to be the thing. I brought a bunch of Flukes. I don't know if I brought any white ones. So now, and you know, I mean, I think another, you know, in talking with a lot of the guys in the, I think we were the only boat that was throwing wacky rigged Senkos. So, you know, if you were with a different guide, the story would be different. So, but all of these giant TRDs, you know, I used 1 or 2 of them maybe. I also had this. I don't know. I think these are maybe 5-inch. Yeah, that's a little 5-inch. He had access to them. Well, maybe it's 6. Because that's 6. They're pretty close. No. I'm going to say it's 5. So these are 5-inch. That's maybe why he didn't like these. And the other thing is, he seemed to be all about green colors. He wasn't interested in the black and blue. As a consequence, I didn't throw it much, and I did throw it a little bit, and I can't tell you I had much success on it. And I actually talked to somebody else, and they kind of said the same thing. So talked about the Pit Boss. Never threw it, never opened it. Big baits, that's the other thing. You know, and I think we had this conversation at the airport on our way out. Big baits just weren't a thing, and next time we go they could be. But swim baits, I threw a burrito. We'll come across it here somewhere. Here it is right here. I did throw this guy a bunch, and I never got a bite. I think that's a 5 or 4.5 inch. I think that's a pretty decent color, but never got a bite. And Kevin had a Real Prey tilapia colored swim bait. They come in a 4.5 inch size and a 6 inch size. He had them both. And we had heard a guy, I think the first or second day, had 3 9-pounders on that bait. So we were in a place that kind of lent itself to that bait. And Kevin, I was throwing the burrito, Kevin was throwing that. I didn't get a bite. He caught an 8, a 5, and then like a 3.5 and a 3. Four fish within an hour on that Real Prey tilapia colored swim bait, the 4.5 inch side. Now, I was throwing this, wasn't getting bites. He caught the 8. I think he caught the 5 first. He caught a 5-pounder. Then he caught an 8, and he was like, hey, I got another one of these. It's a bigger size, but you're welcome to throw it if you want. And I was like, if you catch one more, I will. He caught like a 3.5. I was like, yeah, give it to me. And I threw it on a couple of different occasions. And, I mean, we were throwing them back to back. He did end up catching, a day or two later, he did end up catching another good one on that 4.5 inch size. And I never caught anything on the 6 inch size. And when we were talking to Josh in the lodge, somebody was asking about it. There was kind of a buzz about that bait a little bit. People were interested because of the fish that were being caught on it. And somebody said, hey, should I buy the 6 or the 4.5? And Josh said, right now, 4.5. And he was right. Never threw a jerk bait. Never threw a buzz bait. Never threw a chatter bait. Never threw a rattle trap. I did throw this scrounger for a while. Never got a bite on it. This was something my guide tied on, and we threw it around in the same areas we were throwing those swim baits, and never got a bite on it. I did throw, not that one, but I did throw the Screamin' Chapo for a little while. I just really think poppers were the deal on topwater. I did catch a 6-pounder on a chugging spook, but I think you were better off. I think one of the mistakes that I made, I would tell you that generally bites were hard to come by. There were some older guys there that said they come for once a year. They've been coming for the last 30 years, and they said the week that we were there was among the top 2 or 3 toughest weeks they'd ever been there. So the general consensus was the bite was pretty tough. And as a result, I think one of the mistakes I made is, and something that Kevin did a lot better than me is, he threw the spook in the popper for a while, and he figured out quicker than I did that the spook was the way to, or the popper was the way to go, and then he just wouldn't throw the spook anymore. And what I would do is I'd throw the popper, and you'd go for an hour and not get a bite, and I'd put it down and I'd get the spook. But that was everything. No matter what you threw, you could go for an hour or an hour and a half or 2 hours and not get a bite. And once he decided, hey, the popper's the way to go, he just put it in his hand and he left it there. And he might go an hour. He might go 2 hours without a bite, but he would just keep throwing it, keep the same retrieve that he had figured out worked. And man, it paid dividends for him. He ended up catching an 8-10 on a little popper at the end of the 5th day. It was his biggest fish. And, man, I just didn't figure it out until, I don't think I figured it out until the last day. At the end of the day, I've been like, man, I should have just welded that popper in my hand and just, anyway, that was a mistake that I made. But I'd be tempted not even to bring the prop baits next time. I threw one for a little while, never got a bite on it. It was definitely not the deal while we were down there, and I don't know, based on what I saw, I think those little poppers, I don't know, I kind of think they're the deal, and there may be times when the spook between the two of them, but I wasted time with the spook. I mean, like I said, I did catch a 6-pounder on the spook, but I think your percentages were significantly lower throwing that than the poppers. I brought these as chatterbait trailers, never used them. Oh, the other thing where I think I made a mistake, and definitely something I would change next time. Kevin outfished me in pretty much every way you could outfish a person, but there were times when we were throwing Senkos where I just couldn't figure out how he was getting more bites than me, and I mean, it seemed like I'd be fishing behind him, and then so I kind of got it, and then I was fishing in front of him, and sometimes he was still getting more bites, but then maybe not even that, but maybe we're going down and he's fishing behind me and we're getting the same number of bites, but he's getting all the big ones, and I'm like, oh, his retrieves may be better, maybe he's casting in a better spot. But towards the end of the trip, I kind of asked him, I said, hey, what are you throwing for line? And all I brought with me was 20-pound sunline, and he said, I've got 20-pound sunline and I've got 15, and I'm throwing the Senko on 15. So that could have been a contributing factor. I would probably bring 15 next time. I may not even use it, but I'd at least like to have it. Big, huge floating worm. I might throw this next time, but I didn't throw it this time. So you can see all these baits that are still in packages. I obviously didn't do anything with them. My guide probably would have liked this one if he saw it, but like I said, I wasted a bunch of time with the spook, and you know, I think one of our guide strategies, which I can't necessarily argue with the strategy, is he liked to have us have two different baits in our hands. So, you know, Kevin kind of welded that popper in his hand, so he was always trying to kind of push me to throw the spook, and that was a loser for me. And you know, at first I just kind of went along with it, but towards the end I was like, no, I'm not throwing the spook. I'm going to throw the popper. So, and I made that decision way too late. Never threw any of the, did I throw I had two of these. No, I never threw them. I think I threw one of these, not the big ones though. Did we go through that box? I think I just threw it over here. I did at one point. Josh caught one on a crankbait, and I like to throw a crankbait, so I gave my crankbait box to our guide and said, hey, I want to throw a crankbait, pick one out. And he picked out a DT10 or DT16 Rapella. I threw it for about an hour. I caught one, but it just didn't, in my head anyway, I just didn't think it was going to be a consistent thing, so that was that. I did throw this underspin. He had that dye, so he dipped these. I also had the markers. I never even used the marker. If he wanted some color, he dipped it for me, and I just went along with that. So one of the few Kitechs I threw. The underspin. Never caught one on the underspin. I did throw a 10XD a little bit. Never caught one on that. I don't even know if I threw this bait or Kevin did, but whatever. 50-pound braid. I did throw a spinner bait. Nothing. That's the 10XD that I threw. Obviously, I threw similar poppers to these, but these are still in the box. Oh, there you go. That's the setup for that's your 6-inch Gary Yamamoto Senko with the weighted swim bait hook. Threw that a bunch. Caught a 6-pounder on one of these. That was the biggest one I caught. The first day in the evening, Kevin caught 2 8s on one of these. So you could catch good fish So that's my free rig right there. You'd have a weight, like a 1/2 ounce weight that slid up and down your line. That is a Canada Craw colored Fatty Z. This is my favorite bait while I was down there. Here's a chugging spook. Like I said, I did catch a nice 6-pounder, good blow up. It lost its mind too, jumped out of the water. Unfortunately, my GoPro battery was dead, so I don't have that. But you could catch them on these. Man, did they miss them a bunch. That was the big difference between these and spooks. You'd work them really slow, no matter what you were throwing top water. It was pop, pop, pop. Cadence was like that slow, and all of the bites would come when it was sitting still. And they would miss this more than they would get it. And you'd have some awesome blow-ups. I've got one on video, fishing with Matt Baccarac. And we saw the back of the fish, and he was like, man, that looked like a big one. And I can't say I disagree with him, but it never even got close to having a hook in its mouth. So that was that. And, you know, he had told me before we went out, he jumped in my boat with our guide, and he said, man, I think you need to throw the popper. And we went to throw top water, and I grabbed the popper, and my guide was like, no, throw the spook. And I threw it for a little while. I did end up throwing the popper. But anyway, never threw a Tokyo rig. Fatty Z, great bait. I don't know that this was a great color for the week that I was out there, but I would take a bunch of those. Lizards, we talked about that. That could be kind of a mess, huh? Yeah, I would bring some 15 next time. And if I was smashing them on 20, I wouldn't even worry about it. But if things got tough, I probably would throw some 15 just to see what the deal is. I mean, I don't know if the fish are line shy or the bait just falls in a nicer fashion on a lighter line. Did I throw a cull shad? I don't even know that I did. Okay, so I think we've covered most of this. What's in here? I'm sure I pulled this bag out of that bag so I didn't have to carry it through the airport. Oh, all my jigs. I threw one jig. I would definitely bring jigs again. I mean, obviously that's probably never going to go anywhere without bringing jigs, but I think there were a few fish caught on jigs, but it definitely wasn't like a prevalent deal. I mean, the big fish, most of the big fish were caught with, you know, guys scoping, shaking a minnow. What is this, 6-inch? I never threw this, but, you know, based on what I saw, I think the 4.5-inch would have been the better bait, and I did throw that quite a lot. Never got a bite on it. So, and I think the action of that real prey that Kevin threw, it was different, and the color was different, so probably should have thrown these smaller guys. They seem to be keying on smaller bait. So I got a little project. It's 23 degrees with 30-mile-an-hour winds here, so we're not going to be doing anything outside. So get my tackle sorted out will keep me busy for a little while. A bunch of stuff in here I just didn't throw. Lead heads, these. Probably could have thrown those. Free rig weights, they're smart to buy. I bought the cheap lead ones, and of course Kevin had the tungsten ones, and we started getting bit on those, so I didn't want a chance putting those on, and that being a reason I didn't get bit. So I would buy a pretty good selection of tungsten free rig weights before I go next time. That was really my favorite. Caught my biggest fish out there, 8.2 on a free rig, and I had the most success with the free rig. Never threw that big guy. I mean, I'm sure there's times of the year, I would have to imagine, when that's pretty good. Did not need this jacket at all. My reels, they were in that bag. They were in the carry-on the way down, but I think getting out of Mexico with line on your reels sometimes can be a problem, so I didn't take a chance. Rattle trap, didn't throw it. Never threw an A-rig. Never threw a rattle trap. I probably wouldn't even bring Choppos, Whopper Ploppers next time. Never threw the S-Waver. Threw one spinner bait for a little while. Terminal tackle. I did use my hook sharpener. That's a good thing to have. Gloves. I was glad I had gloves. I didn't use them the first day, and then I think halfway through the morning and the second day, my hands were starting to get beat up, and I wore the gloves pretty regularly after that. I would recommend them. Wasn't a crankbait bite. I would probably definitely bring spooks, but it wasn't a spook bite. And I, you know, I was trying to get away from the spook, and my guide saw this one and he loved it, and every time I went to go get a topwater, he was like, throw this one, throw this one. I thought about giving it to him before we left, and he grabbed my pole, and I was like, if he throws that thing again, I'm just cutting it off and giving it to him. But he ended up taking it off and putting it in my tackle box, so I don't know how much of a chance he gets to fish. So I threw one of these new Screaming Choppos, never got a bite on it, and I just don't think it was the deal. Yeah, I mean, I probably would bring the spooks next time, but I would definitely bring the little poppers. Lead heads, really didn't do much with them. I did throw some shaky heads, but you know, in my opinion, the free rig was really the way to go. I think that does it for this. You know, I mean, I just think next time I'm going to bring a bunch of stuff again next time, and I just go in knowing that you're going to use a small percentage of it, and probably within the first day or two you're going to figure out that, hey, this is what you're going to throw, and the rest of the stuff's never going to make it out of your room. All right. That's that. Never took my Mend It out of the package. Sunscreen, markers. I don't think you need them. If you want them, bring them. You know, I threw some clothes in here. I think this stuff's all clean. They did laundry while we were there. Rain jacket I never used, but I'd probably bring one again just in case. Oh, we already talked about that. My jig stuff. All right. We threw a few curly tail worms. These are useless, I think. You know, I'd never thrown a free rig before, and I knew they used floating baits. What I didn't know was that all the Elastec stuff floats. So I bought these because they said floating, but these are little. I mean, they're 7 inches, but they're skinny. But I don't know if I'll ever use those. I wouldn't bring them back to Mexico. I mean, I probably wouldn't go back to Mexico without bringing some big ribbon and curly tail worms. Kevin caught some decent ones on a ribbon tail worm on the free rig, but I think this is the bait on the free rig. And I mean, I'd throw the Senko. If Z-Man made these dumb worms, I don't know if they're dumb, but I just don't know that I have a use for them. If Z-Man made a lizard in Elastec, I would definitely throw that on the free rig, ribbon tailworms. I'd bring a decent chunk of those. I could see that being hot. Fatty Z's, I'd bring a bunch of those. Maybe not that color if I go back to Baccarac. Maybe they like those in El Salto, but and then these are all going to be swim baits, and man, did we not have luck. And you know, what's this, 5.8? I definitely, you know, in hindsight for this trip, I wouldn't have brought anything bigger than a 5.8, and I probably wouldn't have brought too many 5.8s. I think more like this size would have been the deal. They weren't on big bait. That doesn't mean next time you go down there, that big bait's not gonna. Those are clean socks with a pair of sunglasses on them. Yeah, like these were not the deal. 7.8 inch. And I mean, I bought a ton of this stuff. But I mean, that's gonna happen. Giant TRDs. I mean, we could have maybe caught them like crazy on the giant TRDs, but our guide was not. He was not feeling the giant TRDs. Maybe he knows something that I don't. I'm sure he knows a lot of stuff I don't. This was the bait right here. I think I bought these in the tackle shop down there. The Canada Craw Fatty Z, that was my favorite. More swim baits. You know, and I mean, Kevin said the same thing. He was like, I spent $300 on Kitex and never threw them. And, you know, we were talking at the airport on the way back, and, you know, the guys that have been there before said, yeah, we did the same thing. And I kind of said, well, are you going to bring them when you go back next time? And he said, yeah, absolutely, because you just don't know. You got to bring them, and you're going to bring a bunch of stuff, and only a small percentage of it's going to work. I mean, I bought a bunch of these black and blue. For whatever reason, I watched a video where a guy caught some on this color in Baccarac, and you know, when we were going to El Salto, for whatever reason, I was like, green colors. And then when it got switched to Baccarac, I saw that video, and you know, I was like, oh, maybe black and blue's a better color at Baccarac. Well, the week I was there, it wasn't. And I don't, you know, I mean, obviously you can catch them there at times on black and blue, because I saw it happen, but I don't know. I hope next time I go, I'll be a little less kind of stressed out about not having the right bait. I mean, I do think I learned a few things. Yeah. How many bags of these floating worms did I get? I mean, I just bought the wrong thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh well. All the rest of these pockets empty. That's it.